Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. If this is you watching for your second episode, welcome to Ride the Stream, where we discuss old and new television series and film streaming on our favorite platforms and ones that have access to, I guess. Um, we're starting with the TV series Lost, which originally aired from 2004 to 2010 for a total of 121 episodes. All seasons are currently available at Netflix, and since we both have Netflix, we are starting with a good showrunner, Lost. I am your co-host, Michelle Brittany. I am an independent pop culture scholar. I've edited books on James Bond, space horror films, and co-edited a collection on horror literature. I'm currently co-editing a book of essays on the Mummy franchise that'll be released in 2026. And my co-host and Lost aficionado and expert on Lost is Travis Licata.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if I'd call myself an expert, but thank you. I'm Travis. I am a writer as well. Have a handful of fiction novels I've published. Written for a few different entertainment sites over the years. Currently with Fanbase Press and my Substack, which is the Never Ending Streamer, where I kind of do the written form of diving into TV and movies. So yeah, this is exciting. I'm glad we're back to it. And every time you mention how many episodes are on Lost, I get so excited to be like, oh my gosh, we have so many episodes to get through. So that always brings a smile to my face, knowing that, oh my gosh, I know it's 6 seasons, but when you put it all together, oh, it's that many episodes.
I
That's a
know,
very
I'm
good thing.
especially in today's viewing, especially on Netflix, where um, shows tend to put a lot of emphasis on content and quality with less episodes. And so, we'll see, a season that's like eight. So,
Yeah.
and of course, Lost originally was premiered on television, real television, not our streaming devices that we have today. So it's really different. Um, Saying that, for me, I didn't watch Lost when it first aired back in 2004. But I did start last month watching the first season, and I actually got through episode 21. And of course, I got excited after the first couple, and I wrote you right away, Travis, and said, "Have you happened to watch Lost?" To which opened a
That was such
whole
a good note to
conversation.
receive.
Yeah. And and wanting to do Ride the Stream, which we first conceptualized as a podcast, and we will eventually um have podcasts to share as well. But for now, we're doing YouTube because that's the easiest, quickest, and also free
Yeah.
way of getting our content out there. But I'm excited that we're starting with Lost. And I'll be honest, I was initially attracted to Lost because Netflix has, as I mentioned earlier, all the seasons available. But I also recognized several actors from other projects, be they pre or post Lost. And Travis, I know you come at it from a different direction because you actually watched, I think, what at least half of the run at the time. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I started my very first experience was season 4, episode 1. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I had wanted to watch it. So I was able to, over the next few weeks, watch the first 3 seasons to where I could then watch currently through season 4, 5, and 6. Um, and just a friendly reminder to everyone who's watching, thank you. And then
Yes.
if you do leave a comment, that's great. We love to have a discussion about it. Just be mindful, since Michelle has not watched the entire series, please be mindful of spoiler comments. That would be very much appreciated.
Yes. I want to be surprised. I've even stayed away from like Wikipedia and things like that just so I'm not uh I don't find out things ahead of time because I am anxious to kind of have that experience the first time. And
For
I
me,
really know nothing.
I have to remind myself to have my best poker face and like not slip in any way. So I will do my best
You've
to,
done pretty good so far.
well, one episode.
That's
So
true. One episode in, but
uh but no, this is great. I cannot wait to see and hear your thoughts as we continue to move forward.
well, I think on that note, I think that we should go ahead and jump into season one, episode two, called Pilot Part Two. And just for folks that originally aired on September 29th of 2004. And as the title suggests, this is a continuation of the pilot that started with the first part that we spoke about last week. So, quick synopsis, Saeed repairs the military grade transceiver, but explains that he cannot get a signal on the beach. With little battery life remaining, the best chance of getting a message transmitted out is from one of the mountaintops nearby. Saeed, Kate, Charlie, Shannon, Boone, and Sawyer take a hike. The team run into trouble and encounter a bear creature, kind of like a polar bear creature. And while everyone else runs off, Sawyer stands his ground and pulls a gun, the weapon he took off the U.S. Marshal, and he shoots the animal. Sawyer has been vocal and physical in his belief that Saeed is the Marshal's prisoner, because that's a big question mark. Eventually, they reach the top of the mountain and try to transmit, only to discover that their message is blocked by a pre-existing looping transmission from the island. It's a French message followed by a woman's voice, followed by a male's voice with a series of numbers. And Saeed quickly is trying to figure out how long it's been transmitting, while Shannon, who can speak a little bit of French from her time in France, is listening to the message. Saeed figures out that the message, which is about 30 seconds long, has been transmitting for over 16 years. That's pretty demoralizing moment. Meanwhile, back on the beach, Jack works on the U.S. Marshal, who we may remember from the first episode, has a huge piece of airplane shrapnel in his abdomen that is sticking out and kind of bleeding and kind of trying to, heal around this big piece of shrapnel. Um, and he does wake up after Jack is able to remove the shrapnel. And the first thing the marshal says is, "Where is she?" So um, that's one piece of the puzzle that is starting to, become apparent in the grand scheme of the storytelling. Meanwhile, we also have Michael and Walt having difficulty getting to the same page, where Walt finds the beginnings of a friendship with Locke. And they start to bond over a game of backgammon. We also get two flashbacks in the episode. Charlie, who is revealed to have an addiction to heroin, and Kate, who is revealed to be the marshal's prisoner and who was the one wearing the handcuffs that Walt found earlier in the episode, down on the ground in the jungle. So that kind of gives us an overview of what transpired. And I think I'd actually go ahead and start with questions. since that's a great way
Sure.
of opening up our conversation. So I think we'll start with our good standard first question. And Travis, what was your favorite scene or standout moment to the episode?
Um, there's quite a few that stand out. I'm trying to decipher. There's two in particular that stand out. I'm trying to figure out which is the best one. Um, so I'll go to both are dealing with the unknown. I'll do the one where they're talking about they go on the trek to find a way to send out a message, and all of them hearing the French woman speaking, and you have kind of the ominous music in the background. Um, they're kind of arguing about, you know, Boone's trying to get Shannon to listen, and she's saying she can't speak French, and he's like, "Come on, you were in Paris for a year," and she's just honest, as like, I was in there, what, to go to the bar or something, or suntan or something. But it's just very. I feel like there's the show's done a good job providing natural reactions that are believable. And Sawyer's being himself. He's being, impatient and a jerk, and everyone's telling him to shut up. And so the realization of what she's saying, which I actually copied and wrote so I could read it back verbatim, and then Saeed quickly determining how long
Yes.
um, the message has been playing for, which I think speaks to a level of his intelligence and ability to decipher things. Um, so it to your point where you said how demoralizing that moment is. Um, so the reason I picked this moment over the bear is I love the line that ends the show where Charlie, after all of this back and forth and figuring out the message, Charlie just goes, "Guys, where are we?" And
Mhm.
it's such a simple but powerful message that it's the antithesis of the show. It's where are they? What is going on? And just hearing those words aloud is, I think, very powerful, at least for me to hear. And every
Mhm.
time I hear it, I'm like, oh, that's such a good line. So that scene, I think, is the best scene of the show. And if you want, like, I can
Oh, yes,
read.
please do. Hmm.
So let's see. So she starts to translate. She says, "Please help me. Please come get me. I'm alone now, on the island alone. Please, someone come. The others, they're dead. It killed them. It killed them all." And that's hearing that and knowing that that message has been playing for 16 hours. And one of them points out, like, you know, maybe Kate, I think was the one maybe said that, oh, maybe she was rescued. And Sawyer quickly is like, then why didn't they turn it off? So
Hmm.
completely demoralizing. I 100% agree with you. It's the perfect word. Um, where do you lean watching this? Did you have a favorite
Oh, yeah.
moment or?
I did. And I don't think it's going to be a surprise, but mine was the exact same scene. I love seeing how Saeed and the group were working and not working together to understand the distress call that had been looping for over the 16 years. I felt like the scene really kind of highlighted the strength and weaknesses of each character. Um, Shannon really shines as she listens and translates French for the rest of the group. And while Sawyer is constantly interjecting his distrust and, you know, feeling like, oh, well, it can't be right, while at the same time finger pointing to Saeed, um, that he can't be trusted and things like that. I also felt that while I feel like the scene does two things. Not only does it, like you said, convey that sense of helplessness, um, it's demoralizing. It on so many levels, it hits what I think the show is going to hit throughout the all the seasons. And it underscores Charlie's question, where are we? So I really feel like that scene really epitomized the title of the show, Lost. But again, um, solidifies and again pulls us as the audience in that we are lost too. Because we don't, I mean, I don't know about you, but it's kind of like, well, what do you make of a polar bear or dog looking creature in the middle of a jungle in what should be probably the South Pacific? Um, and the other thing that I feel that the scene does is strengthen, I think, the creator's choices of who they have in each role, because I feel like the timing of the actors is just absolutely spot on. Because not only do they have to know their own lines, they've got to know everybody else's. And I'm trying to remember, but I think that was a one take scene. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and take another watch. But even if it wasn't, um, just putting that all together, and even if it wasn't all together as one in their editing, to be able to do all that and multiple cameras and everything else, getting your establishing shot, it was a technical, difficult scene, and one that really did stand out for just really coming together on so many levels in front of the camera and then also behind the camera. So, yeah, that's like you, it's my favorite as well.
And I will say, I know we highlighted the, cinematography in the first episode,
Hmm.
and I I think this episode just is so it's done equally as well, even though you might have the broad stroking, sweeping video of the beach and but like that scene in particular where they're just going back from visual to visual and you have a certain angle that's up close and
Hmm.
um I think that's exceptionally well done. And just the again back to the chemistry of this five, throughout their different moments through this trek. Um, like we were saying, how they were working together well or they weren't. If you see them climbing up the mountain, they're helping each other along the way, um, and then you have the bickering back and forth, whether it's there with the signal or with the polar bear. Um, yeah, it really is a testament to the creators and the cast, just the whole cast and crew. They just seem to like nail it, you
Hmm.
know, with what we've seen in the pilot, well, part one and two. Um, so I don't know if you could ask for more from two episodes, um, especially ending part two with that scene. Again, it triggers more questions, um, and you're starting to just get more and more detail about the characters and having the two flashback scenes, I think, was important to establish.
Hmm.
Back in the first episode, when Charlie was kind of like in a daze walking on the beach with plane parts falling all around him, and he was just kind of like nonchalant about it.
Hmm.
Him being on the heroin, that makes sense. And, identifying who the cuffs belong to um, leads to more questions. Okay, why? why was Kate the one? So
Yeah.
I think they again doing a great job establishing the unknown and like sprinkling enough breadcrumbs along the way to move forward. Man, there are some hearty breadcrumbs. I mean, it's just
Oh,
really good.
yeah. I think it also shows that the creators have a sense of understanding, again, of blending the genres. Particularly, I feel like this episode, with the first one, obviously, and having watched through 21, knowing a little bit ahead with regards to those, is how melodrama really works well here. Because, you think of the soap operas, and as much as we want to maybe not admit that we watched them, maybe I did, and
I watched
Dynasty
some
in
as a
the
kid.
evening. Yeah,
Yeah,
Dynasty and Dallas and all those. They work so well because they were able to reveal enough, but then stack on more questions that you couldn't help but want to come back. And this is a more contemporary and a more mysterious melodrama. And I think, it goes to show how well this comes together, and how well a melodrama can blend with a lot of other genres. I mean, we know that, but they did it so expertly.
yeah,
So it was definitely enjoyable. Yeah, because you know, um, getting to see more about Charlie, getting to see more about Kate. Um, this I feel, where episode one was coming together and being introduced. Number two is okay, further introduction, but also starting to peel back the onion or the veneer, and show that there's a lot of um, fragmentation underneath the surface. And that
yeah,
is as you start to deal with more stress, more unknown, and as things become more visible, more of that fragmentation, and that disjointedness, and probably, as we know, kind of a separation of groups in the coming episodes. And, we can say, when they split off and things like that a little bit in the upcoming episodes. Um, it just goes to show that, you know, things can bring us together, but it can also be the same things that pull us apart.
yeah,
And we saw that 4 years ago, with when COVID, hit our shores, and I think it was what mid-March. That those of us that were working in offices were sent home, and I remember in the early days how people were accommodating, they were nice.
yeah,
And that went by the wayside eventually. But where as things wore on, it tested our perseverance and patience, and what we wanted to get things done individually or as a group. And sometimes you kind of don't see the best in people. And I think Sawyer, where he's got a lot of anger, but there was something, like before he joined the group, because I was surprised that he joined the group, because up till then, he was pretty much sticking at camp. Like he didn't ask to
yeah,
go look at the front end of the plane. Um, but as you might remember, he was sitting on a piece of the wreckage, and he was reading a letter. And it was
yeah,
like, okay, what was in the letter? Because he seemed genuinely impacted by whatever he was reading in that letter. What was it about the letter that made him decide to join the group? Um, I'm curious, what that was, that would make him want to put himself at risk and go on this, especially since he doesn't trust Saeed. And I don't know that that was his first motivating reason to go. So, that's a question that I feel is left unanswered. Um, so it'll
Yeah.
be interesting.
Yes, Sawyer, you know, and him and Saeed fight in this episode,
Yeah, right at the
you know,
beginning when the three come back from their hike.
where he uh accuses Saeed of being the one who crashed the plane, then accuses him of being the one in the handcuffs. Um, so and it is a good point, like wondering why Sawyer joins this hike. Because I didn't even think as that didn't cross my mind as being a potential motivating factor for him. Like, oh, I got to keep my eyes. No, um, so that's a great question to why he would want to do it. And his response to Kate when she asked him, like, it's like, oh, I'm a complicated person.
Yeah.
Um, um,
He gets some
so
great lines, I have to say.
he does. I've I've been trying to figure out who like who would be a favorite character from this episode, and like he's definitely one of them.
Hmm.
Um, because he has those moments. And like as he's continuing along the trail and they confront this, oh, what's great is that what are you talking about? Like the stresses that they're all dealing with and like things go by the wayside. Like they're dealing with this plane crash, not knowing if they're going to survive. And Sawyer and Saeed have already been at each other's throats, and they're wandering along the jungle, and Sawyer starts yelling at Saeed to try for a signal, and Saeed's like, I don't want to waste the battery. We're not high enough. And they're about to tear into each other again when we hear the bear growl in the distance. And it's great TV, I think. You see everyone run away, and then Sawyer just stands there and
I
he
know.
pulls out the gun. I'm like, whoa, what? Like,
Where did that
where did
come
this come from?
from? Yeah.
And he shoots it, and like like the first episode, we had not a lot of humor, but
Mhm.
Charlie was being the one like, I'm Charlie. Like Charlie's here. You keep
Yeah.
screaming for Jack, but I'm here too. So
Yeah.
it's a little like humor. And here, after he shoots the bear, and Kate's like, where did that come from? He's like, how the hell do I know? Bear Village? But she was talking about the gun.
Yeah.
And it's just like that a little moment like that that helps like kind of break the tension that you like, at least for me
Mhm.
as a viewer, I'm feeling because like even though I've watched the series, I still feel that intensity within those moments.
Yeah. And the follow-up to that, um, which I think is really great juxtaposition to the flashback of Kate and finding out she's the one in the handcuffs, and that she was the U.S. Marshals prisoner, is the fact that the way that she, kind of brings Sawyer back down, is to take the gun away from him, excuse me, from him. She gives the bullets to Saeed, and then she hands the empty gun back to Sawyer. And it's almost like an invitation. All right, you each have a half. Make up and work together.
Yeah.
And so I'm left thinking, okay, um, she is very complicated because the fact of she's done something wrong. She's been picked up, she's been arrested, yet she definitely has morals, because she chose to do that. She didn't keep the gun herself. She passed it back, and presented a different situation or a way to solve the power struggle between those two so that they're back on kind of equal footing. I thought that was brilliant. But it
And
does
she asked the others
make
how to take apart the gun too.
yes. Yeah. Yes.
And again, we see Saeed with the knowledge um to take it apart. And I think it's early in this episode we learn. from his conversation with Hurley that he was in the Republican Guard during the
Yeah.
Gulf War,
Hmm.
um, which Hurley obviously gives him he goes over there to like be friendly and, tell him Sawyer's a jerk and he asks about, oh, where did I had some friends in uh, I don't know if it was the Air Force or
Yeah.
what, and he asks where Saeed serves, and he tells him he was a communication officer in the Republican Guard. So then we see later his continued knowledge of being able how to take apart a gun, and
Yeah.
um, so I like how much more we're getting of these other characters in this episode.
Yeah. Well, I think that leads in really well to our second question, which is who was the most interesting character from the episode? So, Travis, was it
Ah,
is it a toughie for you?
it is. It's a it's a tale of two styles between for me it's between Sawyer and Hurley. Um, Sawyer we've talked about. You know, he's abrasive, but then he has this like funny moments like where he talks about, I took the gun. I thought it'd come in handy. Guess what? I just shot a bear. And his delivery is so great. And on
Yeah.
the flip side, you know, he's bonded with Jack. And you can tell he's just a kind person at heart.
Yeah.
And he Jack wants him to help him like hold down the marshal while he takes the shrapnel out. And Hurley's just not sure. Are you sure he's not going to wake up? And he
Yeah.
shouts like, "Oh, look, a rescue boat! Hooray!" And he's like, "Yeah, he's out." But just that interaction there, I'll probably go with Sawyer because of the really polar opposites that we know about him. Like he's really shown to be this gruff jerk, and then on the other side, he has these moments where it's like lighthearted, uh, backhanded comment that is just like straightforward. Like I found the gun, thought would be handy, and I just shot a bear. In those moments, and he's I think he's more visible in this episode too than Hurley. So I think that's maybe where I'll lean towards him in this episode as being the standout. But you can't, I you got to recognize Hurley.
Yeah.
It's so. Did you have a character that you thought stood out the most to you?
I did. And it was hard. So for me, because we had the flashback of Kate and some of the narrative beats for her, and again, having strength, but also having the complexity of not really, she seems to be ethically and morally sound, and yet for some reason um she's been arrested for something. We don't know what. But I'm gonna go with Shannon. Surprise, surprise.
Okay.
But I think that, she, to me, I thought had the most astonishing character shift, in spite of her basically overbearing brother, Boone. Um, and the fact that she really does, I mean, I always kind of use the hero's journey as a yardstick. And I just feel in the first two episodes we've seen glimpses of what I'm hoping Shannon will become. You know, um, to go from self-doubt, um, in denial, an outlier, remaining an outlier because she truly believes that they're going to get rescued within a few days. Why should she have the candy bar? Because I'll just wait till the food comes with with rescue, and
Yep.
stuff like that. Too, um, the continual self-doubt, but she's also, before she went on the hike with everyone, she was starting. to have self-realization of how lucky she is to be alive. And the fact that if they had sat, her and Boone had sat in the seats that I don't know if they were originally assigned or they were trying to get into or whatever. Maybe we'll see that in a flashback down the road. Um, but where they ended up sitting actually saved them. And she thinks about, the fact that, just one person doing their job, how impactful that is to her and her brother, for instance. So I think she starts to see and becomes a little more self-aware, and is not so in her little denial bubble. It's starting to burst, and crack, or at least crack and fragment, like a lot of other things that are starting to fragment around her, for the other characters. So for me, I feel like when she was up on that mountain, and again, don't we all have that self-talk that demoralizes us and keeps us from being able to do what we can do if we just put our minds to it?
Yep.
And I think in that moment when she was like, oh, I was in Paris because I was at the bars, that was what was important. And the fact that she actually did pick up some stuff and that she's able to, she actually, you know, physically took the transceiver and was listening so that she could just concentrate on that and focus in on that while everybody around her is chaos. And that through that chaos, she was able to listen to the message, she was able to translate and then give it back to everybody. That was so impactful. That was a huge impact to the episode. And of course, leads to Charlie, hey guys, where are we? So for me, I felt that that was, I think, the first spark for Shannon, that I'm hoping that we'll see in many episodes to come, develop and flourish, and bloom, um, in the episodes to come. So it's Shannon's my vote for this one.
Uh, no, I think that's a great pick. I will say something I picked up in this episode that I hadn't really picked up or thought about before is the scene with Shannon where she's laying on her back sunbathing, and there's just this confidence that we'll be rescued, and then Claire is next to her, who is 8 months pregnant, you know, and she tells Shannon, "Oh, I used to have a belly once, or I used to have a stomach once," and so that's when I think Shannon turns over to her side, maybe onto her stomach, and asks if Claire knows if she knows if it's going to be a boy or girl. And then as Claire's talking, you see Shannon kind of go flat on her stomach and she kind of buries her face a little bit under her arms. And made me really think there's like a fine line between, confidence and this self-doubt that you're talking about. Like where like coming to terms, she's seeing an 8 month pregnant lady next to her. They're stranded and like she's starting to like bury her face a little bit, maybe like to hide this uncertainty that she's feeling. And I had never really thought about that before. And I think that's why the show is so good. They take their characters and they really give them a lot of depth, to your point. And so I think Shannon is a great pick. So her going on this, if she didn't go on the trip, they wouldn't have been able to decipher the message. And now that they just have 50 million more questions that they are gonna have to freak out about. So, um, yeah, this was a really, really good episode. And I'll probably be saying that a lot through our watch through.
I think I will
Uh,
too.
no, Shannon's a great pick.
Yeah. Well, we do a third question, and I'm sure this will open up some things too. But since you are the veteran of this partnership, um, in your rewatch this time, I would love to know, were you surprised by Kate's flashback the first time you saw it? Because we obviously, Sawyer's pointing fingers all over the place. We're getting a lot of red herrings, and then surprise, surprise, it's actually Kate. So, thinking back to your first time when you saw the show, was that a surprise to you? Were you thinking it might be somebody else? And if
Um,
so, who?
I don't recall being certain about anyone being in it. I do remember when they revealed Kate, and my memory could be a little fuzzy, but um, I don't know if it threw me off that much.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know if it's because Kate, her character does a good job at being inquisitive about, how is the marshal or, so when it's revealed, it's like, oh, you kind of go back to a couple moments where like, oh, okay. She was kind of like inquiring about the marshal or um if he said anything and, you know, or maybe not at that point, but I don't recall it being too much of a shock.
Mhm.
Um, I just think that they established enough uncertainty with all of the characters that it just kind of made sense when they revealed it.
Mhm.
Were you super surprised by the reveal?
Um, yeah, a little bit, but then I was actually glad that it didn't turn out to be like Sawyer or Saeed because I think those we've been pushed so far to not necessarily like Sawyer. And I'm glad that it wasn't Saeed because I feel like that would have like kind of leaned heavy into the stereotype, especially since this was, back in 2004. So I think Kate was not the obvious choice. But the fact that she is more of a main character, out of the seven or eight that tend to be kind of our kind of our core group. Um, I couldn't see Hurley as being, you know, uh that I
Right.
think that would have been a little bit of a stretch. But it
Or
would,
Jack.
or yeah, or Jack. I think those would have been a stretch. And then Michael and Walter together, so it's not them.
Yeah.
Locke is an oddball, so maybe Locke, but I think the direction for Locke really goes in an interesting direction too. So I think the fact that it turned out to be Kate and the fact that we were seeing we're I think it got revealed at the right time to kind of throw us off and have us continue to question, thinking, oh, I know Kate. Kate is trustworthy. She's good at diffusing situations. She's good at taking, or seeing kernels of advice, like Jack with him, counting to three or five or whatever it is.
Yep.
Um, and things like that, and thinking, okay, it's almost like, okay, I'm getting comfortable with this character, and then we get hit with something, you know, kind of like the George R. R. Martin technique, in Game of Thrones, where you like a character and they get killed off, yeah, type of
Yeah.
thing. And I feel like I think this was good. I think we there's lots of good that we're seeing in Kate, and then we get thrown off, and so now we're out of balance again, and we're kind of lost with that character because now we're like, well, I like her. What could she have done? Now I've got, you know, 10 questions about, well, what's going on with Kate? And I think I think a good television show is one where you end up thinking about it, going over and over about it, the fact that it continues to resonate in your memory. And again, I think this goes back to my comment in our first episode where I felt like this isn't a show to binge. necessarily, because otherwise I think you lose out on that opportunity to kind of simmer and percolate with the
Totally.
episode. And that's, I think, what is interesting in that particular case with Kate, the fact that if you're binging, you might not really spend a whole lot of time thinking about that. Whereas when this was originally aired, you had a whole lot of folks wondering, what the hell did she do? And, contemplating Charlie's question about where are they, you know? So,
And you're spot on, I think, with the timing. Like, I think revealing it now, so that way you have the added questions, makes so much more sense. Um, Rather than like holding out that question of who's in the handcuffs for like a few more episodes.
mhm,
Um, so I definitely think it's a much better impact to go ahead and like reveal that now, and then it's just like well, where are we with this character? What does it mean going forward? Like, is it a situation that's impossible to get out of because of the severity of whatever she did to be picked up? So, I think you're spot on with the timing. I can't imagine them have waited longer to reveal that because it fits so well.
yeah. Yeah. And I really appreciate, in the first episode, we just had Jack's flashback. Now we got Charlie's and Kate's. So it'll be interesting to see, next episode. I'm gonna actually go back and rewatch episode 3, because right now I can't remember who the flashbacks uh that were featured. But I really like the idea of the flashbacks to give a little bit. I really, really have to commend the core writers for these first 2 episodes. Um, and the fact that they were really trying to do a lot of things. They were trying to set up a plot that can be carried through, but they were also looking to give just enough information and also drop those hearty breadcrumbs so that when that last one falls, that puzzle piece falls into place for that particular line, that it really kind of like a lock that becomes unlocked.
Yep.
All the gears fall into place, and you're all like, oh yes, yes, yeah, oh yes, yes, and on down the line. And then it just kind of like a domino just starts falling into place. Um, I I admire that kind of writing. I wish I could write like that. But, I'm
Same.
just, you know, I think it was like, I think the first 2 episodes, the pilot was, I think, like six people that worked on these first 2. And it just amazing. It really came out of the gate so strong with the pilot, and putting it in 2 parts, I think worked well because it really it gave enough to really hook you, and then they kept it. It's always the first season is usually pretty good for because I don't know about you, but I feel like television shows usually the first season is really firing on all cylinders. It's whether they can sustain it in season
Yeah.
2 and going forward. So obviously down the line when we're on season 2, episode 1, we'll have to revisit, whether they're, still as strong as they were in these first 2 pilot shows.
And even like the difference between episode one and two, like episode one was focusing on like Jack, Charlie, and Kate. And then this episode they branched up or ramped that up to five, but you still
Mhm.
got snippets from other people. You got more of Hurley, you got more of Shannon and snippets of Claire. And like I thought it was interesting with Jen. Like he's mean. He's nasty to Sun. Like he shouts at her to button her shirt when she's talking to Michael. He slaps her hand when she's trying to help him prepare food. but then he tries to provide food for everyone else on the beach was like this polar opposite. And I know Hurley, he laughs at him like, and it's like, no way, I'm hungry, but I'm not eating that. But I remember seeing like it looked like I don't know if sad's the right word, but Jin looked defeated. And maybe that's just the language barrier, or maybe it's just the fact that Hurley's like, no way, I'm not eating.
Yeah.
And then, he gets Claire to try some, and she feels the baby kick for the first time in a while. So again, the creators, the fact that six were responsible for the pilot is astounding to think about because they're putting together so many pieces.
Hmm.
And um, as I watch it, it makes me think I've always considered it to be one of my favorite shows. And as I'm watching again, it's like, it is so good. And it just reaffirms, like, because it's been 5 or 6 years since I've watched it. So, or rewatched it, I should say. Um, so seeing these little tidbits, and I think I'm probably trying to pay attention to more of the minutia in between, and
Hmm.
um, so it's really good. And I think that seeing the polar opposites in characters with Sawyer and Jen and Kate,
Yeah.
who Kate almost kind of seems like she's the glue of the show at this point because she's connecting these different people together, going on different journeys, and um, so I know Jack was highlighted in the first episode, but she almost seems like she could be like the main character
Hmm.
because of her interactions with everyone.
Yeah. Well, I did do a little bit of reading. So, that could have happened if they had decided to not keep Jack in the show after the pilot. So it is interesting that you picked up on that she is such a strong character, and the fact that she, like aptly say, that she is kind of the glue, and she is kind of that connection between different places. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep that, if she continues to be the real kind of glue for all these different places. I did want to go back and acknowledge um, the comments that you made about Jun and Sun, and how polar opposite he is, um, and just how that really brings up some of the humor within the show, because there definitely is. And I think, again, just like, as you know, when you're writing horror or reading horror, you have to have some pauses. And I think that those humorous beats are helpful to kind of like take a breath, you know,
Yeah.
because like the one with Hurley, as he sits down with Saeed to kind of like bond over the fact that Sawyer is an asshole. Um, and that, Hurley thinks that Saeed is all right. And Saeed thinks that, he is all right too. Um, it's those kind of moments that help you to bond as well. You bond over humor, and sometimes laughter is some good medicine in there. And I think that is definitely aspects of the show I'll be looking forward to. Um, and again, having seen a few, there's one in particular with Sawyer that I'm thinking of that I'm sure we'll have a chit chat about. But I think that, having some humor in there, I mean, because this really is a human story, and it really is a character-driven story. So humans have humor, as well as horror and fear and self-doubt and, motivational factors and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's natural that there be some humor. Um, So, yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And yeah, breaking up the intensity with the humor is such a key component to the show in these episodes. Just because you're right, it's like you're almost like you're holding your breath, and like you said, you gotta let it out and take another breath. And so it's the timing's really well. The delivery is done in such a good way. Um, I mean, just thinking about like Hurley just turning away food from from Jin, and then the way Sawyer, quips about I just shot a bear. Like, um, the cast is who they cast in these roles just fit so well,
Oh yeah.
and I can't imagine uh it any other way.
Now I can't either. I think there's such great chemistry with all of them, that I'm really enjoying, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about them as each episode unfolds. Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah, me either. So, I don't know. Do you have any kind of closing comments about episode two that we maybe didn't get discussed?
Um, I don't know. I think we might have hit all of the main points. I mean, I think this might have been the episode where Locke asked Walt if he wanted to know a secret while he was sitting down
Right.
with backgammon with him. So there's like a little more intrigue with his character. Uh, I know the Walt and Michael are at odds because Walt wants to find his dog, and Michael's like, "No, your dog's gone. We'll get you a new dog," which doesn't set well. And then Jack's the one that kind of tells him, "Oh yeah, dog's in there. Looked good." And
Yeah.
so, um, I think those are the only other things I can think of
Mhm.
that kind of helped carry, you know, what's been happening throughout the course of the show with the characters and their focuses, and with Walt the
Mhm.
dog and Locke being kind of an enigma a little bit. Um, so I think we've hit all of the major points.
Yeah, I'll just add, since you did bring up about Locke and Walt, and his question if he wanted to know a secret, just backing up briefly to that. Walt does open up to Locke and mentions that, he had been living with his mom, who had died a couple of weeks prior. She was young. Um, so, it's kind of like, that tragedy of life, right? Somebody dies young and you're like, why them? They still have so much life ahead of them and things like that. And I like how Walt responded, because or not Walt, I'm sorry, how Locke responds to Walt. He kind of talks to him like he's another person,
Yeah,
and respects him. And he Locke responds to Walt and says, "Sounds like you're having a bad month." Yeah.
right. Yeah,
And it's like, yeah, yeah, and I like how they bond, so I think that uh that was good. Gives us that humor, but also spends a few moments revealing a little bit of Walt and why Walt and Michael are not getting on the same page. I I wouldn't have been happy for a parent to tell me, "Oh, we'll just got get you another dog or another cat." I would be
yeah,
like, "No."
yeah, and that's great with Locke comment too, because he's not trying to like brush it off or anything. It's just like straightforward to the point. Uh, and Walt, I think his response was like, "Yeah, I guess." Um, and even Locke's description of backgammon, where he doesn't describe it
Yes.
as black and white, he describes it as light and dark, which I I've always thought, well, that's an interesting way to look at the game pieces.
Hmm.
And which in the back of my mind is like sad representation of the characters that we're seeing in too, like polar opposites. There's some light, there's some dark, like Sawyer
Yeah.
being like a jackass and also kind of
Yeah.
being helpful or so um
And
yeah,
again,
really strong characters.
that juxtaposition between light and dark. Saeed physically is dark, but he's really a light, and Sawyer, who obviously is a white guy, Southern guy, but he's really shown a lot of darkness in his
Yeah.
character. And yeah, great point.
Yeah. I think that this episode only just fuels for more content. And I like knowing that we're going to be focusing on each episode one at a time. I think that's it's almost like we're getting to like watch it and you take that week in between when it was airing on TV and you get to process it and
Yeah,
you know break down the little tidbits. Such a fun way to go through it.
yeah, definitely. Well, on that note, we will be back next week with another episode of Ride the Stream, on which we'll be talking about season one, episode three, Tabula Rosa. So if you've seen the show, or maybe it's been a few years, definitely go back and take another watch. Uh, definitely like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that way you don't miss our content, obviously. And leave us a note. Engage with us via the notes below. And as uh, Travis says, please no spoilers.
Please.
Thanks so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye all.